and we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host Andrew Johnson. And Johnson, it is that perfect time of the year. Selection Sunday has hit us. We have now gotten the field of 68 for this year's NCAA tournament. We now know the matchups. We now know who will be playing who in this year's NCAA tournament. I will say, in terms of the teams that were on the bubble and the teams that were off the bubble, I thought the committee did a fine job in terms of that. You might disagree with that for a particular team. I understand that sentiment. But overall, a very interesting bracket that we've received now, and you and I will be breaking down the matches we have going into this upcoming first round of the NCAA tournament, while also giving our potential Cinderella picks this upcoming tournament, our teams to make the Final Four, and our teams to make the national championship and win the national championship at the end of the day.
Yeah, this is going to be a rapid reaction, Nick, because the bracket just came out half an hour ago, so this is our first look. We've had no more than 30 minutes to really think about this, and I haven't done really much research on any of the matchups. Now, my opinions can change up in a couple days when I probably make my 15th bracket because, gonna go full psycho mode and make 25. Bracket. Yeah, usually around 11 to 12, I really start to cook. And then by the time I get to like 22 and 23, I'm not cooking anymore.
Okay.
So usually I won't submit obviously, but the first 4 brackets I'll make won't be the best ones. And then somewhere between 5 and 12 are gonna be my best brackets. So the more I go through it, the more I read about the teams, I'm gonna change it. But these are gonna be our rapid reactions, Nick. This is what our gut instinct is telling us. And I will say, even though our team is a little underseeded, my gut reaction compared to last year is I like the second round matchup better for us. That's my gut reaction this year.
Yes. And I think we'll break that down in a few moments. I think we'll start off with that entire region itself. I do agree with that sentiment. I think, obviously the first round matchup is a bit of a trickier matchup just because of the style of play the other team plays, but it's doable in the second round if it's a particular team. And again, obviously, Johnson, they set up a matchup where it could be 2 Hall of Fame basketball head coaches in that second round, which is what happened last year with St. John's. And we'll see what happens for them. But I think let's start off with that East region. Duke, of course, the number 1 overall seed in the entire NCAA tournament. They won the ACC tournament. They are limping going into this tournament. They, of course, had some injuries before the ACC tournament took place, but they were still able to get the job done. They are the 1 seed. They'll take on Siena. Shout out Jerry McNamara and Siena getting the 16th seed. They will be facing off in the first round. The 8-9 matchup in that region is the Ohio State Buckeyes and the TCU Horned Frogs. Very interesting 8-9 right there. The 5 seed St. John's Red Storm, of course, they just won the Big East Championship for the second straight season. They'll be taking on Northern Iowa, the number 12 seed in the first round. More than likely will be a low-scoring game between those 2 teams in the first round, but just basing it off of what we've already seen from the projected lines for that game. The 4-13 matchup is the Kansas Jayhawks. They'll be taking on the 13 seed Cal Baptist, who won a thrilling game last night to win their conference championship. You have the 6th seed in the ACC, Louisville, taking on the 11 seed South Florida, who just won the American championship earlier today. The 3-14 matchup is the 3rd seed Michigan State, taking on the 14 seed North Dakota State. The 7-10 matchup, you have UCLA taking on UCF. And then to round out the region, it's the 2-seeded UConn Huskies taking on Furman, the 15 seed.
Yeah, I would want to talk about a couple of these teams first. Conference championships, for the most part, do not matter. The committee has made that clear.
Unless the only one that mattered was the Purdue one.
There's the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The SEC didn't move a needle. The Big 12, no needle moving. Big East, no needle moving. It's just a lack of respect for teams trying to play themselves into the bubble here. And the NCAA went away with all predictive measures here. Predictive analytics, they did not care. They did not really care. And it really is a shame here because you have teams that are way overseeded and teams that are way underseeded in this region. To me, Ohio State and TCU, that's not 8-9 matchup. To me, Ohio State is a 9 and TCU is a 10. You have St. John's, to me, winning the Big East Championship They should have been a 4 seed. I don't care. They should have had a protected seed, except but they're going to be sent across the country now to play Kansas in potentially the second round, and then they'd play number 1 overall seed Duke. So to me, if St. John's was a 5 going into the Big East tournament, which was the consensus opinion, they were a consensus 5 going into the Big East tournament. They should have been the number. They should have been the last 4 seed to me.
Right,
Of
and
the
they weren't
conference.
even the
And UConn, despite
yeah. Go ahead.
losing 4 of their last 11 games, losing to Marquette, losing to St. John's twice, doesn't matter. UConn still is rewarded with regional seeding.
Right. I think looking at it, they released the final seedings for each team. I think St. John's finished the 18th
Yes,
overall team, so they were the second highest five
which
seed
again does not make
behind
sense.
Vanderbilt.
It does not make sense. If they have a second overall highest 5 seed, they should not be in a bracket with Duke. If you're not going to give them regional seeding at that point, they should be in a bracket with probably Arizona.
Yeah, yeah,
They
that
should.
definitely could be the case. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mentioned this to you last night, obviously off the air, but it's a weird year because you're trying not to have what's going on in college football, where the conference championships don't really mean as much as what we see now. Obviously, for college basketball, they mean a lot for a couple of things, but it felt like this year was a little bit of a different turning of the tide. As you mentioned, the other one that really felt like that was the case was the Big Ten, because Purdue went from a proverbial 4 seed at the beginning of the tournament
To
to a
two.
number 2 seed at the end of the day, and they
And this is a
have
team that had lost it. That, by the way, they had lost a lot of their games down the stretch where they
yes,
didn't even have a bye in the Big Ten tournament.
yeah,
So I don't understand how the seeding worked this year. This is, to me, very rewarding mediocre play.
yeah. So I think the best way to look at this, Johnson, is we look at each of these matchups. I think we're all in agreement Duke beats Seattle. No disrespect to Seattle, just Duke is still a really solid team. That Ohio State TCU matchup is very intriguing. I like Ohio State in that matchup. I don't know if you feel the same way. I
I
think
don't
just
care. I honestly don't care.
that's fair. I like Bruce Thornton and what he's been doing this season for the Buckeyes. Obviously, we're going to be biased with the St. John's pick, but that is a tricky game against Northern Iowa. They have, of course, already have previous tournament success in pulling off upsets, so that's definitely a tricky matchup. Kansas Cal Baptist, that could be a trap game for Kansas. Cal Baptist is a very, very sneaky, underrated team, having a really, really solid season. The bottom of that bracket: Louisville, South Florida, Michigan State, North Dakota State, UCLA, UCF, UConn, Furman. You look at this region. If you had to pick an upset that could happen in this region, where would you go with that?
South Florida over Louisville.
That was one of the ones I was looking at.
Yeah, it's South Florida over Louisville for your true 11-6. I mean, you could pick the 9-8, but that's not really fun. Uh, Cal Baptist, that's a great story, but Kansas is not going to lose in the first round. I could see UCF over UCLA too. That's a realistic one. The 7-10, that's another popular one. But if you want to go for your traditional, 11-6 or 12-5 or 13-4, give me South Florida, Louisville. South Florida wouldn't have been in the tournament if they lost today. By the way, if they
Yes,
did not win this if they
yeah,
did not win this championship game, they would not going to be in there.
and the same
And
thing goes for VCU. We'll talk about them later.
yeah, and South Florida, it's a it's a sneaky team. They're not really the best team out there, but they have some good wins. They beat Utah State, which is a solid 9 seed. So if they could beat Utah State, which has had a decent year so far, they have the potential. But they've also dropped a couple of really bad games. I remember they lost to Temple early on in the year.
Right.
Uh, but they have that high ceiling. And let's face it, when you take a look at Louisville, they've really kind of I don't want to say dropped the ball down the stretch, but they've lost a lot of games down the stretch here. And again, it's all quality competition. I don't really want to fault them for getting swept by Duke or losing to Virginia, right?
Hmm.
But it kind of goes in the back of your mind now, right? Like if you start off strong and you're kind of faltering towards the middle part, towards the end of the season, you have to think a little bit there.
Yeah, I think
So I'd pick
Louisville.
USF over Louisville. That's what I would pick.
Louisville's in a very interesting spot in that game because you're right. South Florida, of course, if not winning the conference championship, would not have made the tournament. Louisville, of course, had that tough loss to Miami. That was a back and forth game, and the Hurricanes pulled away late in that one. I was leaning that way originally when I was looking for upset in this region. I don't. I'm gonna pick Cal Baptist over Kansas. I think that's gonna be my
You
upset in this region.
really? I mean, I'm not expecting that at all. I mean, I think Kansas is. I don't want to say overseeded, right?
Mm,
Because they've had a great year. They have Darren Peterson. They
right.
have 9
You have
quad
a
one
top five pick
wins,
in Pearson, no question about it.
but they've lost. They've gotten blown out in some really big games. I mean, they
Right.
have multiple 20-point losses this season. And again, I'm not going to fault you for losing against Duke, Houston, or Arizona, but it's kind of in the back of your mind, right? Because you have this really high ceiling when you can have a 20-point win against Iowa State, which is one of it, could cut down the nets here.
Hmm.
But then you get blown out, in the same sentence, in the same breath to Houston. So I don't know. It's a good question. And that Houston loss, by the way, that's recent. They got absolutely destroyed in the
Yeah,
Big
it was
12 tournament.
really bad showing for them in the. They were my pick to win the Big 12. I thought maybe they could go on a run in the tournament,
Yeah,
and then
listen, I
they
hear
just could
you.
not score. They could not
No,
score in that
no,
game.
listen, Kansas is a great team, and I mean, I one of my preseason favorites because I thought Darren Peterson is so good, and
Yeah,
now that Darren Peterson really, if he, it's gonna be what goes through his mind.
yeah.
Like if he's sitting there
And
thinking, okay,
that's
I have a chance to win. If they were like a 2 seed, right, and he's like thinking, oh, I have a chance to win national championship, yada yada. But now he's like, I'm a 4 seed. I got to play Duke in the Sweet 16 if I win both games. Do I want to hurt my draft stock more by getting hurt? So it's gonna come down to what his camp kind of wants best for him, and
right,
I'm hoping he puts 100% in because if it comes down to St. John's, Kansas, I want him at 100%.
right. I think my couple of reasons for the reason I'm picking this upset is you mentioned Peterson. We don't know what we're going to get out of it. He's a great player, but is the effort going to be there? I don't know with him at this point. Like it's just been such a weird year with him, and he's having a great season still. Don't get me wrong; he's averaging almost 20 points a game this year. I'm looking at Cal Baptist because it's going to be technically a home game for them. If you remember, they're going to be in San Diego for this game, so it's somewhat of a home game for them.
Yeah,
And
Kansas, they travel well though.
they do no discredit to that. And Dominic Daniels is having a great season for Cal Baptist. He's averaging 23 points a game this season. Had a tremendous tournament run for Cal Baptist to help them win their conference tournament. I could see him going off for an insane game against this Kansas team that hasn't really looked strong this year defensively. That's why there's a couple of scenarios where I'm looking at it and saying to myself, I could see maybe Cal Baptist pulling this off. It doesn't seem like a team like Kansas would lose in the first round like this, but it's been just such a weird year for them that I could maybe see it happening. So I'll go with Cal Baptist over Kansas in the first round upset for me in that region. Then let's say Johnson. Well, let's go to the Midwest. I think we'll go to next.
Let's do the Midwest, Nick.
Okay, so the Midwest, of course, you have the Michigan Wolverines, the 1 seed. They lost in the Big Ten tournament earlier, championship game to Purdue. They'll be taking on either UMBC or Howard, who will be playing in the first four matchup. On I believe that game is on Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check that in just a few short moments. Anyway, the 8-9 matchup is Georgia versus St. Louis. You then have the 5-12 matchup Texas Tech versus the 12 seed MAC champion Akron Zips. The 4 seed Alabama Crimson Tide will take on the 13 seed Hofstra Pride, their first NCAA tournament since 2001. Tennessee, the 6 seed, taking on either Miami, Ohio, or SMU. Of course, Miami, Ohio, one of the biggest, talks of the entire college basketball season. They lose to UMass in the first round, or the second round, I guess, of the MAC tournament, and they become a now first four in game on Wednesday. So they'll take on SMU in that matchup. The 3-14, you have Virginia and Wright State. You have the 7-10 matchup, a very interesting matchup with Kentucky and Santa Clara. And then the 2-15, Iowa State and Tennessee State.
Yeah, Nick. So I want to go over this bracket a little bit. Despite not winning the Big Ten championship, I still have Michigan coming out of here. To me, they're the best team in this tournament. I
I
don't
guess
care what happened today, but to
yeah.
me, it's still Michigan.
I guess we could backtrack. Also, should we go back to the East region? I guess also and decide make our picks for that since we're
Yeah, we
talking about.
can.
I still have Duke in that region. I know the injuries are definitely a concern. Um, I just I think looking at that region, I'm not too sold on what's been happening with UConn as of late. I understand that might be biased. They haven't looked strong as of late to me. They have been playing some really bad
This is
games.
gonna be my hot take with UConn. Duke is not getting out of the Sweet 16. That's my first hot take. I think the winner of St. John's, Kansas, is going to upset Duke. They
Okay.
have the injury concern, and freshmen do not win in March.
Okay.
That's it. UConn, despite what's happened, I think they're going to take this punch in the mouth. They're going to take that frustration out on Furman. And let's be real, UCLA and UCF will not be beating UConn. So I think the Huskies
Yeah, the only
to the
way.
Sweet 16 is pretty easy. And then it comes down to Michigan State, Louisville, North Dakota State, or South Florida. If I'm doing the bracket in my head right now. If it's Michigan State over South Florida, because I'm expecting South Florida to go on, do you think a Michigan State UConn game on a neutral court and better seating for the Huskies? Because I don't know where exactly the game will be, but it'll be a lot closer to Connecticut than the Michigan. And you get that storyline too. You have Big Ten Titan, Michigan State, Tom Izzo, legendary March head coach, versus Danny Hurley. I would be hard pressed to bet against Danny Hurley. I would be hard pressed to bet against him in that scenario.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
if Duke is going to go down in the Sweet 16, it's going to be UConn's bracket to lose, in my opinion.
All right, so you have UConn and I have Duke in the East region.
Yeah, and another thing is if it's UConn and St. John's in the Elite Eight, unfortunately, St. John's is not winning 3 out of 4 against UConn. So
That would be
that's what
something if they give us a round four.
yeah, that's why I'm picking UConn because they're not getting 3 out. They'll split it. UConn will unfortunately get the better of the more important matchups because clearly conference championships no longer matter, and the Huskies would go to the Final Four, which would be killing me, but it is what it is because Val Ackerman doesn't know how to actually advocate for her conference. But number 1 and number 2 seed get put in the same side of a bracket. So great job, Val. Really looking out for your conference. Villanova gets underseeded too. This superb job. Always looking out for the best.
All right, I'll keep it going anyway on that point, I guess. I have Michigan in this region also, and I'm just looking at it based off of the entire region itself. Iowa State has played has been really playing good as of late. I like what they did in the Big 12 tournament. They had a really big heartbreaker against Arizona to lose in that tournament at the buzzer. But I really like how they're playing right now. They could really probably provide the biggest threat to Michigan in this region. I'm looking at the rest of it, and I have an upset, obviously, in this region. No, we're obviously going to make a pick to have an upset in this region. We might have the same one. I'm not sure entirely if it's going to be that way, but I like Michigan's chances. I think them losing the Big Ten championship is probably going to help them get better. I think you and I have both agreed that sometimes that we've seen in years past that does help teams once March hits and once this tournament hits. Even if you lose your conference championship, you still can make a run in the NCAA tournament despite that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Nick, what's your Midwest region first round upset if you have to pick one?
If I had to pick one, it's Akron over Texas Tech.
Akron over Oh, I like that. You know what? I'm glad that's the one we agree on. That's the mush right there.
Yeah.
I love the way JT Toppin's injured. It sucks. I get it. He's one of the most talented players in the country, and I hope to see him make a full recovery and be an NBA player. But Akron is a hot team. This is another team that we had picked to win the MAC, and they would not be here if they did not win their tournament. The other one, if I had to pick one, Hofstra over Alabama.
I do like
Alabama
that.
played illegitimate games with Charles Bedieko, multiple games that should have been thrown out of consideration, but they still end up with a 4 seed. So
the reason I like that too is Bama's defense has really not been great this season. So if Hofstra,
Cruz Davis is a monster,
right? If they can go back and forth with Bama, they could definitely provide a potential upset in that matchup. 100%.
Yeah, Cruz, he's done a fantastic job. He spent 2 years with Rick Pitino. He didn't really play much at St. John's. He played a little bit at Iona with him, but man, he's been a wagon at Hofstra.
Yeah, I looked at like I thought about maybe Kentucky and Santa Clara. I'm not sold on Santa Clara. I think Kentucky wins that matchup.
I Kentucky's
Relative,
been playing a little bit better
yeah,
as
like
of late.
and I'm looking at this. I don't know if you saw the spread for that game too.
I'm gonna say Kentucky minus 9.5.
That is not what they have.
What
It's
do we
not.
have?
It's a very close matchup. I think it's minus. Right now, it's Kentucky minus 3.5.
3.5. Okay,
Yeah,
a lot closer.
it was 2.5 originally when I saw it. Maybe
Yeah,
I
people
think
are laying that. I would
yeah.
lay that too. So
Immediately
it
as
might
soon as the
balloon up
bracket
to
was
five.
released.
It might balloon up to 5.5, 6.5. Then
Yeah, I just really don't expect Kentucky to lose that
listen,
matchup.
Santa Clara, great mid
No,
major.
great story.
Great story. Love it. Free bid West Coast Conference. You know, it's a swan song for Gonzaga and the rest of those guys because they're going to be leaving for the new Pac-12.
Yeah,
And but this is what you end up with though. So I'm glad that at
and
least maybe Santa Clara can be the St. Mary's of that conference, and maybe St. Mary's will
right.
be the Gonzaga of that conference. As strange as that sounds.
And I think the other one, that's closest in this region, St. Louis and Georgia. I just don't. As much as I want, it would be fun to see maybe St. Louis get that win. They have not been playing good as of recent. I like Georgia in that matchup to win. It's a close spread right now, but I think Georgia wins that one. I think relatively easy.
This is one of the best teams in Georgia basketball history too.
Yeah,
Not saying
that's
it's the
after
best.
losing Silas Tamari Jr.
Yeah, this is one of the better teams in the history of that program.
So our upset is Akron over Texas Tech. You're going with that one too.
Yeah, that's the easy one for me.
Oh boy,
And I don't want to say it's a mush, but like Akron's playing great,
no, they
and
are.
they made a comeback in
They
the
hey,
MAC
listen,
championship game too. They
yeah,
played with a lot of heart.
they survived already one mush from us. They still won the MAC despite us both picking them in the MAC to win it. So maybe they get the job done. Maybe they get it done. South Florida also able to get to avoid the double mush. And you have them as your upset in the East region. Unfortunately for Michigan and Florida and UConn, that was not the same. They all uh, reeked.
You know what we could potentially see?
What could we say?
We could see Akron Hofstra second round, so we
We
get one of
could.
those teams in the Sweet 16, and then they're just gonna be absolutely fed to Michigan.
Yeah.
So you could see the Hofstra
Yeah.
pride. It would be a great story, and then you get fed to Michigan.
Although I would love to see Michigan play Alabama. Bama gets to the Sweet 16. I think that would be
That'd be a great game too.
very, very fun matchup if that does happen for those two teams. Let's now go over to the South region, Johnson.
Let's talk about it.
Let's start off with the number one seed, Florida, who, of course, was the preemptive favorite in the SEC to win the conference tournament, but they fall to Vanderbilt in the semifinals. They still get a one seed just because UConn was not able to win the Big East, so they are the one seed. They'll take on Prairie View, A&M, or Lehigh. Very happy to see Lehigh back in the tournament. Of course,
They
their
should
first
pair them up
tournament
with Duke.
since they beat Duke, yes, with CJ McCollum on that roster. The 8-9 matchup, you have Clemson taking on Iowa in what will more than likely be a low-scoring game in that matchup. The 5-12 matchup is Vanderbilt versus McNeese. Shout out McNeese. They lose their head coach, Will Wade, but they're back in the tournament 1 year after they lose him. So great job by McNeese to get back into the tournament. The 4-13, you have Nebraska and Troy. Nebraska looking for their first ever conference tournament, or not conference tournament, the first NCAA tournament win in program history. They had a very, very tremendous season with Fred Hoiberg at the helm. 6-11 matchup is North Carolina, of course, is limping into the tournament without Caleb Wilson. They will take on the 11 seed VCU, who, of course, won the A10 championship earlier today. I mentioned if they did not win the A10,
Can we talk about how
they would not have made the tournament.
UNC is getting a home game too? Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Even though UNC, again, another team that regional seeding is not supposed to exist outside of the top four, this is beyond egregious. For a VCU team that has had to fight and claw their way into this tournament, and they said they'd be the last team out if they didn't make it, which would have been a tragedy because this VCU team is way more talented than that Miami, Ohio team. 31 and 1 be damned. And to have this be VCU's reward, I think it's sickening.
I already told you off the air. We're gonna get to that the last region in a few moments. That's not even the most egregious home court advantage. I think this entire tournament. You already know what it is. Don't get me wrong. This is not great for VCU because the game is in South Carolina, and North Carolina, of course, will have a
It's
good
it is
will have a
it is
good
in Virginia.
advantage.
It is Virginia, so it is travelable. They can travel to it. It might be
Yeah,
5-6 hours away, but it's gonna be
I
easy. You don't have
think
to hop on a plane.
here's the thing with this matchup though for VCU. I think it's favorable because North Carolina is
Does
just
not have Caleb
they just
Wilson.
don't have Caleb Wilson, so it's like, what are you going to get out of this team coming in the tournament? Like, I don't know. I think that's where I think if I'm a VCU fan, I'm not completely upset by it because you're facing a team that right now has obviously not looked like the same tournament since the team since the Wilson injury happened. So I don't think I'm too upset by it. I think obviously regional wise maybe, but I think matchup wise, I think this is pretty good for them. They might have a chance to pull off the upset
Yeah, and I like
in
how
that
you're saying
region.
that because if I did have to pick a team to upset, it would be VCU over North Carolina. That'd be my upset here.
I'll give you mine in just a moment. I'll finish out the rest of the bracket. 3 seed Illinois and the 14th seed Penn. Penn won a crazy game in the Ivy League earlier to win the Ivy League championship. Shout out Fran McCaffrey after getting fired from Iowa, goes back to Penn and he wins the conference in his first year. St. Mary's gets Texas A&M the 7-10 matchup, and then Houston and Idaho in the 2-15. So you're giving your pick VCU over North Carolina. That's your upset.
Yes, sir.
My upset is going to be, I don't think this will be shocking to you, Johnson, because I talked bad about them last week. I'm going to go with Troy over Nebraska. I I
You
just
know, that's on. If I had to pick this bracket, Nick, that's another one. That's another upset. But I don't think I have the. I can't
trust
officially
it.
put that
Yeah.
as my because you know what? They've never won a tournament game,
Yes.
and Nebraska is faltering towards the end of the season. They start off 20-0, and they end the
hmm
season 6-6. So they're clearly on a downward trend. They lose a close one to Michigan. They lose two to Purdue. They lose to Illinois. The only really good win they have in the last 2 months is against a Michigan State team at home by a bucket. They're trending downwards, and it's going to be beyond an uphill battle for Troy, but it's a winnable game for them.
Troy has the size that they could really provide them a tough matchup in that game because they have a couple guys that are averaging near double figures or over double figures in rebounding this year. So I think defensively that could provide a problem for Nebraska in that game. Um, I wasn't going to take the easy way out with Texas A&M because they are technically an underdog going into that game against St. Mary's. I think they win that game per se,
I mean,
but
I'll give you my full bracket right now on this side. And again, this is my gut
sure.
reaction right here. I mean, obviously
Obviously,
Florida.
Florida. I have
Then
Iowa in that game.
I
I don't know
have
about you.
Iowa.
Yeah,
I've got
okay.
Vandy.
Vandy, yep.
I got Troy.
I have Troy as well.
VCU.
I'm going to stick with North Carolina.
All right, that's
I
fair.
still think they
That's
still
a
get it
pick 'em,
done.
by the way.
That is a
That's
pick 'em.
yeah. I mean, it's 2.5 points favoring North Carolina, but that's pretty much a pick 'em in college basketball.
Yep.
I have Illinois over Penn, and that's a pretty large spread there. I mean, that's a titan
I
for them
might
to
take Penn
conquer.
to cover that. I'm not going to lie with you.
I would take Penn to cover that too because Illinois
Did
is
you
another team
see?
that hasn't been great towards the stretch too.
I talked to you earlier about this while the game was going on, and I'm trying to remember his name at the top of my head. I think his last name was Booker. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not Booker. I'm sorry. It's TJ Power. TJ Power.
TJ Power 44 points.
Over
Yes,
40 points, and I think he had 14 rebounds in that game. He will
monster
power
game.
Penn to get into the tournament. I would love to see him going up against this Illinois team that has
Yeah,
had a
so
pretty good season, but
he has. He's
yeah.
had an excellent season. Then I would go A&M over St. Mary's.
Yep.
Houston over Idaho State.
Yep.
Then from the top down again, Florida over Iowa. Vandy over Troy.
Well, I'm gonna go with Vandy. Yeah.
Then here's where we're gonna differ, Nick. VCU over Illinois to get into the Sweet 16.
Oh, okay.
And then I have Houston over A&M. And then this is when sanity comes back. Houston over Vandy. And then, I'm sorry, Florida over Vandy. Then Houston over
Houston
VCU.
over VCU.
And that leads to my winner of this region, Houston.
So you have the national championship game as your rematch in the
I do. And I have Houston going over this
I have
time.
the exact same, and I also have Houston. So that might be a bad jinx
I got
for Houston.
I have Florida doing the JOB this time.
Yeah, I think I just like Houston and what they can provide going into this tournament. Obviously Kingston Flemings is a really strong player. He's going to be a lottery pick. in the NBA draft, it's really tough for teams to go back to back. Obviously, Florida's done it once already. I don't think they do it twice this year. I think Houston does get the revenge this time around. I agree with you. I think Houston gets it done, and they go back to the Final Four. And they, for me, would get a rematch from last year's Final Four with Duke. Maybe a potential revenge game for them in that for Duke, maybe on that side after they absolutely collapsed in that matchup with the Cougars. But we still have one more region left, Johnson, before we get to the Final Four and our Cinderella pick for this tournament. Let's go to the West region, where the Arizona Wildcats won the Big 12 tournament last night. They are the number one seed. They will take on 16 seed LIU. Shout out LIU, fins up. I mean, it would be crazy if they could pull off the upset. I think that would be the 116-1 I would love to see happen if it were to happen. So we'll see what they do against the Wildcats. The 8 seed Villanova Wildcats, speaking of Wildcats, will take on 9 seed Utah State. The 5-12 is Wisconsin versus High Point. The 4-13 is the SEC champions Arkansas taking on the 13 seed Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, who are back in the tournament for the first time in a very long time. I think since 2013, if I'm not mistaken, was the last time Hawaii was in the NCAA tournament. But that's just completely guessing. I could be wrong about the exact year they made it to the NCAA tournament. 16 BYU taking on the winner of Texas at NC State. That's a playing game that will be happening on Tuesday night. The 3-14 is Gonzaga versus Kennesaw State. The 7-10 matchup, Miami and Missouri. This was the matchup I said was the most egregious because this game is going to be played in St. Louis, Missouri. So Missouri is getting a full-on home game against Miami. That's just a really tough draw for Miami at the end of the day. And then 2-15 is Purdue against Queens. That makes their first ever NCAA tournament.
All right, Nick. All said and done. Who's going to win your West? Who's going to win the West for you?
I got Arizona. I have Arizona.
I am not that impressed with Arizona. I'll be real with you.
Okay.
I'm picking Arkansas.
I'm between Arizona and Arkansas. Those were the two teams. I love Acuff.
It's gonna Acuff.
Acuff's amazing.
Really great player. I mean,
I have agreed with a lot of people. I didn't mean to cut you off. I agree with a lot of people, and I'm starting to really believe this. Calipari has head coached a lot of great guards in college before. This might be his best one he's had yet. And that's saying something.
That's high praise. You have guys,
John Wall,
Derrick Rose.
SGA, Derrick Rose. I think this might be the best one he's had. Acuff's been incredible. Like, this is some of the best play I think I've ever seen a freshman guard ever had. But go ahead. You have Arkansas?
I have Arkansas. I got Arkansas, and if you had to pick a Cinderella here, Nick, who you pick?
This is where it's tough. The upset is so tough in this region.
This is the one I don't want to say ironclad region.
Yeah,
but this is the one I'm really struggling with. Where I'm taking the chalk bracket here.
Yeah, this feels like a chalk bracket. If I had to pick one, I mean,
this is the one I would pick, and this is the one I would pick, and here's my logic.
Okay,
I have this team going to the Sweet 16, actually, even though they haven't performed well. If they can win the first matchup, which is going to be the play-in Texas versus NC State, BYU, that would be the team I think is vulnerable.
Yes.
Here's my reasoning why.
I love their matchup with Gonzaga potentially in the second round.
Yeah, I think if they get out of the first round, they're going to beat Gonzaga because Gonzaga, they haven't had a really great win all year. Their best win of the year is a 35-point drubbing of Kentucky, and this is when Kentucky was at its lowest point. They had no roster cohesion. They had injuries early in the year, and this is why you can't put a stress on December basketball because this is
the best
over.
Win is probably the Bama game, right?
Yeah, and that's in November.
It was an early season game.
It's an early season game. Early season basketball is great to see where a team currently is, and then you want to see how they perform going down the stretch.
Yeah,
Gonzaga down the stretch, their best win since that Kentucky game is a home win versus St. Mary's. That's the best win?
Yeah,
home win versus St. Mary's? BYU, exact opposite. Early on the season, and they had a terrible late January and early February to mid-February. Absolutely terrible. Dropping games to Arizona, Kansas, and Houston. They got swept by Arizona in that center. And
Hmm.
then they had a little revival. They had solid games against Texas Tech, against Iowa State, and you know what? They almost beat Houston. They came back, and it was a very, very close game. So they made it a game. They have the confidence, and BYU is a team that's better now than they were in November. So BYU, as long as they can get out of the round of 64, I think they'll be a Sweet 16 team. I think they're going to be the team that would upset Gonzaga.
Yeah, I'm full heartedly agree with you with that. It just comes down to this. I mean, they have the potential player of the year on one side, and a potential guy that's might go number one in the draft, depending on who you talk to. It's a lot of different people could go number one at this point in the NBA draft. But AJ DeBanza had an incredible season for BYU. 25 points a game, near 7 rebounds per game, near 4 assists per. Like, obviously, outside of him, it's been a rough year for BYU. They lost Sanders this season. Robert Wright is their second best player, but they have now looked pretty. Don't get me wrong. Down the stretch of the season, they have had some really tough games. They've been in a couple of these games. Against Houston, the Big 12 tournament, they fought with them, but they could not get the job done. But I think this is just a weird year where I think I agree with you. If they think that they get Gonzaga in that second round, I think they beat Gonzaga in that second round. They could probably provide a fight against Purdue if it's them in the Sweet 16. I just don't know if that's going to be enough against them in the Sweet
So,
16.
Nick, we agree we have a chalk bracket in the round of
We
64,
got to pick
right?
one upset though.
I know, but we agree. And this is my
I think this is a
bracket.
chalk side. Yeah, I think this region's the chalky one.
And then I have Arizona over Nova. Then I have Arkansas over Wisconsin. I've got BYU over Gonzaga, which we agree with.
Yeah,
Purdue over Miami.
I had Purdue
Uh,
over Missouri in that game, but yeah,
okay, that's fair.
and I'm not going to count that as the upset because again,
It's pretty much a home game.
Missouri is playing a home game. They are an underdog in that game, but it doesn't matter. Like I just think I think that's gonna. I think that's just such a big disadvantage for Miami to go basically on the road, and they're not going to have a lot of people in attendance for that game.
I
Unfortunately,
agree. Then I've got Arkansas over Arizona, my big upset. Then even maybe a bigger upset, BYU over Purdue in
oh,
the
you do
Elite
have
Eight.
them over Purdue. Okay,
And then I got Arkansas over BYU because if I'm going to talk myself into Arkansas into winning this region, that's how they get there.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I am pulling for Arkansas and Arizona in the Sweet 16. That would be another incredible matchup. Um, I love Koa Pete. I think he's one of my favorite players in the entire country for Arizona. I think if I had to pick an upset, I think I'm going to lean to I guess High Point over Wisconsin. I think that's where I would lean towards. And even that, I don't feel
That's a fair
confident
one.
in.
Wisconsin's not that great.
Wisconsin has a great 1-2 punch of Nick Boyd and John Blackwell, but again, with this being a chalk region, in my opinion, I just think if there's going to be an upset in the first round, that's probably the one I lean towards. Hawaii, I would love to say yes, but I love Acuff too. I just don't think there's a way that they lose that game. And I can't see one of those top 3 seeds losing. Gonzaga doesn't lose, will not lose. I mean, Purdue. It wouldn't be shocking if they lost at this rate, the way their track record has been. But I don't see them losing with the run they're on right now. Zona, I think right now is on a complete tear. If I had to pick one, I would say High Point over Wisconsin, but I'm not really confident on that one.
So, Nick, you're picking Arizona out of the West.
I am picking Arizona out of the West. Did you pick your upset if you had to pick one?
Yeah, Texas slash NC State
You had
over
to play and
BYU.
went over BYU if you had
Yeah,
to.
if I
We
had to
both
pick one.
agree BYU, I think, will still beat them. But if we had to pick
I
one,
agree. If I had to pick one, that's the
yeah,
one I would
that's
pick.
fair. Okay.
And
Go
so,
ahead.
Nick, to recap, I've got UConn out of the East. You have Duke out of the East.
Yes.
We're both agreeing on Michigan
And
out of the
Houston.
Midwest and Houston out of the South. And then in the West, you've got Arizona, and I have Arkansas.
I'm a very chalky bracket.
I mean, mine's chalk. I have
it's chalk
I
outside
have
of Arkansas.
yeah, I mean it's 2 seeds and 1 seed, and then the
Yeah.
4 seed. So it's a bit chalk. It's not that boring where I pick the number 1 seed.
I was trying to talk myself into Michigan State in the East. I really did. I think to me, I think they can beat
It's the
UConn.
UConn game.
I think they can
yeah.
beat them. I think they can. But I don't know if I could talk myself into them being UConn. I think they can beat them, but will I pick them against UConn? I don't know. They first have to get there, of course, obviously. Um,
So the
but yeah,
only team that we have surviving, because you originally we both had UConn in our Final Four, we
yep,
both had Michigan in our Final Four. I had Duke, and I had and you had Florida, Illinois.
yeah.
So we have a couple different ones right here, and now on our revised ones, we both have Houston. I still have UConn. You took Duke. We still both have Michigan, Arkansas, Arizona. So now that we actually have a Final Four of a bracket, it's a little bit different.
Do you want to make a pick for who we think would be the Cinderella of the tournament?
VCU for me.
Yeah, VCU. I will. I'll go with Troy. I'll go with Troy because
Troy is crazy pick.
I think if they get past Nebraska and they play Vanderbilt, I think they can win that game. I think they can win.
I would love to see it. A 13 seed, Sweet 16, it'd be shades of St. Peter's.
Yeah. I think the problem I would love it to be Akron, but I can't see them getting past if it's Bama. I don't see them getting past Bama. If they obviously get Hofstra, then that's a different story. But I just can't see them being Bama. Cal Baptist, I picked them, but I mean for personal reasons, I'm not going to pick them to beat St. John's, but that would be a potential upset for them. They would have a chance in that game. If I had to pick one, it'd be Troy to be my Cinderella. Give me the Trojans. So we you mentioned our regional winners. Who do you have going into the national championship? So let me paint a picture for you. Of course, so you have in the East, you have UConn. They would be taking on Houston in your first Final Four matchup, and in the
Yep.
other Final Four matchup, you would have Michigan and Arkansas.
My national championship game is going to be Houston, Michigan.
Houston and Michigan. Okay. Do you want to make your pick for the championship game now, or you want me to give
Same
my
same one I've had. It's Michigan Wolverines.
Michigan?
I'm still right. I think it's my preseason team to win the national title game too.
Yeah, I believe it was. I don't remember who. I think we went over this last week. I don't remember who I picked for the preseason. It was not Michigan. I want to look right now, real quick.
But who do you have, Nick? Tell me your bracket. I'll look for you in the meantime.
It was Houston. It was Houston.
There you go.
Well, I'll tell you this. So obviously on my side, I have Duke playing Houston in that rematch from last year's Final Four. I have Houston winning that game, and Duke unfortunately getting the loss on that one again from last year's Final Four. And on the other side, I have Arizona taking on Michigan. I had Michigan originally as my national champion. I'm going to switch it to Arizona. I'm going to have Arizona in a full Big 12 final national championship game. And I will take Arizona to win the national championship.
Well, there you have it, Nick.
I've been on Michigan with you all season. I think they haven't looked impressive the last couple weeks. I think that's really concerning me. But I still think they are a credible team still, regardless.
So what ESPN currently has 3 million brackets as of 7:57 on 3:15.
That's crazy.
27% of champions of brackets are picking Duke. 18.6% for Arizona, 14.1% for Michigan, 7.4% for Florida, and Houston 5.6%. That rounds up the top 5. The next 6: UConn, Purdue, Iowa State, Arkansas, Michigan, and the only other teams with 1% or more: Gonzaga, the Johnnies, Kansas, Illinois, and Virginia. That would round out the top 15.
Yeah, I'm looking at in terms of if you want to bet on the national championship, Duke is the favorite.
I can't see them getting even out of their region. I'll be quite frank with you.
It's then followed by Michigan. It's a close split between them and Michigan. Arizona, Florida, and then Houston. That's the top 5 in terms of betting odds wise for the Natty. But yeah, like I said, this is a weird tournament where the bubble was bad, but I felt like they did a good enough job because I think the first team out was Oklahoma. They didn't really deserve to be in the tournament. I think they got that right.
They got the bubble right.
The bubble I thought was right.
I think Miami, Ohio did not deserve it. Yada yada yada.
Yeah,
whatever. They got in. They got in. They pretty much got in because the bubble was so awful that I don't think they could justify putting a 17-win SEC team, especially if it's the 11th one.
Yeah,
That's why they got in. If this was a strong bubble, they would not be in.
You can't put Auburn in there. Texas got a big break because
I
they
can't wait for
lost.
Texas, by the way.
Hmm,
You know why? You know where Sean Miller has to go, right? He's going to Dayton. There's
yes,
going to be
that's
Xavier
true.
fans there booing him. They're going to be the biggest
That is
NC
true.
State fans there are. So I cannot. That's going to be absolute
There
cinema
are
to
some
watch
fun
that.
storylines in this tournament. For
Yeah,
us
that's
St.
that's one of
John's,
them.
um, Zuby Ejiofor has a chance to play his former team, Kansas, in the second round. Like that. That's a storyline I noticed
By the way,
when that
St.
happened.
John's starting its Ring of Honor. Zuby Ejiofor invited next year. That's been released in the last hour. More information to follow.
Does not surprise me whatsoever. Not the slightest.
And by the way,
Um,
we're not a 9:30 tip. We're a 4:30 p.m. tip. So it's
oh,
going to be great.
they officially announced the start times for these games.
Yes, they're releasing most of them, and St.
Most of
John's
them.
is a 4:30 p.m. start time.
Okay, I don't hate that. I do not hate that.
I like it too.
That's a Friday game, right? Their game.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Friday. I don't hate that at all. I was looking at some of the other storylines for this tournament. I forgot what was. 'Cause it was mostly for second round potential matchups. It wasn't really like in the first round. I talked about Bill Self and Patino. That's already an obvious. Um, Kind of funny, if this was in football terms, Michigan would be playing Georgia, then maybe Alabama in the first potential couple matchups after if they win. Um, let's see. Oh, I guess Fran McCaffrey could potentially play Penn if those two teams somehow made an insane run to the
Yeah,
Elite
they
Eight.
could.
That would never. I mean, it'd be incredible if that did happen, but I will. It will. It's probably less than 1% chance of that ever happening. But would be a funny story if it did happen. I don't think I see any other ones. I don't know if you see. I don't know if you have any that you could think of,
Not
storyline
off the
wise.
top of my head, Nick.
Izzo. I think the East. I think the East also. Speaking of that, you with the coaching. I mean, obviously, some incredible coaches in that region. Cronin, Hurley, Izzo, Patino, Self. Obviously, Shire has been great his first couple years at Duke. Some very good coaches in that region too. Um, I'd be very curious to see how that all plays out. But I guess that pretty much does it, Johnson. We look at what's been an incredible college basketball season. It's going to be an interesting tournament as it always is. Um, I don't know how many upsets we'll get in the first round. I think a lot of people are projecting a couple of them, but I think regardless, we're going to have some great competition over this first week of the tournament. Obviously the first games will be played on Thursday and Friday, and then we'll go into the weekend for the second round matchups. And then once those are done and concluded, you and I will recap the first and second round of the NCAA tournament. We'll then reconvene for the Sweet 16 and preview those matchups, and then break those down, and then so on and so forth for the rest of this NCAA tournament. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up.
This is March.
I could not have said it any better myself. This is indeed March, and this is the best time of the year. March Madness is upon us. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. The Field of 68 has been released. We now have an NCAA tournament. It gets started on Tuesday with the first four matchups. We'll see how those matchups fare on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then it all leads up to Thursday, our first round matchups in the NCAA tournament. They then continue on Friday, and then we go into the weekend for the second round of the NCAA tournament. Johnson and I will be recapping all of the coverage and action of this year's NCAA tournament over the next couple of weeks here on the show. We'll be previewing the second round, the Sweet 16, Elite Eight, Final Four, National Championship. All those games will be previewed while also recapping the most previous rounds in this year's NCAA tournament. It will certainly be a blast. For Nicholas Pavone and Andrew Johnson, this has been the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.